Coogs house. When we get the ball, we score. That was a Conner Weigman told the offense late in the second quarter. And man, oh man, it was nice to see this offense show up and do exactly that. Houston wins over Oklahoma State, back on track in the Big 12.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day, or in this case, maybe your first listen after the game, listen on the way home. More if you watch the game, but we appreciate you making your first decision in whatever decision that is today. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda, moving the game forward, and Houston moves forward at 5-1 after this big win over Oklahoma State. 39-17 is the largest margin victory Houston's had over a Big 12 school as a Big 12 football team. And man, oh man, I want to talk about how they feel like they're back, but still not quite perfect. I want to talk about if this game means something, and then I want to talk about giving some potential like nightcaps, tip of the cap, nightcap kind of caps out in this game. It's not a nighttime, I guess, yet, but nightcap feels like the right thing to do. Is what we do after a victory. Houston Cougar victory in this weekend, 39-17. And the story of the game to me has to be Amari Thomas. We've kind of followed him all year long. He'll come up a couple times in this post-game show. But the way he occupies the middle of the field and finds the first down markers and keeps the ball moving, 7 catches, 157 yards, 22 per catch. Did not actually end up in the end zone, but set up a couple touchdowns in his own right. I really felt like Amari came on in this one. And we've talked about for a few weeks now, even in stretches of Texas Tech, that debacle was like, well, where did he go, right? Because it's felt like he and Conner Weigman have this kind of a connection. And ultimately, it was nice to see it finally bust back out, so to speak, in this victory. Amari is really good in that middle area of the field. Full disclosure, I think Texas Tech's about to say, I was still thinking last week, that Oklahoma State looks vulnerable in that portion of the field all week, and Houston was able to take advantage of them in that way. Obviously, a lot of things his way, Amari Thomas's way. I would point out, though, that Conner Weigman was able to find, 6 different receivers from multiple catches in this game. The offense threw 24 passes, did rush the ball for, I guess, added up to be 45 rushes. I would point out that some of those were late game stall, run the clock out kind of things, but it felt like having 34 pass attempts and 45 run attempts was a good combination for this offense. Conner Weigman looked in sync and in style, getting the ball out of his hands fast. He broke 300 yards passing for the first time since he was at A&M playing against Louisiana Monroe. It was the first time Houston Cougar has thrown for 300 yards since Donovan Smith did that in a very pass-happy game plan against Texas about 2 years ago at this point. Wegman was impressive in this one as well. Obviously, he gets the passing stats for all those Amari Thomas receiving stats. I think, though, what's awesome to see out of him and what is translatable to future wins for this Houston Cougar team as well is how quickly he delivered the ball. Obviously, Houston is rebuilding and a rebuilding process. The offensive line sometimes can be the slowest part of that. And frankly, it's one of those things where if any one of the 5 guys does something wrong or has a misstep on a play, it can just break everything down. The 5 fingers have to make a fist in that way. It's never more than 1 or 2 guys' fault necessarily. But with that said, Conner being able to deliver the ball fast really helped negate a lot of those issues. Speaking of negating issues, I think we got to get some snaps here for Dean Connors. Might have had the catch of the year in the end zone. If you got guys that can catch that out of the backfield like that, first of all, we're putting that on SportsCenter, right? Like that's got to be a SportsCenter play. But Dean Connors I love that. So as Wegman's fleshing to his left, he's got Dean Connors on, I think, as a linebacker, might have a big safety, but he's got him kind of behind him. The guy's trailing Dean, and Connor just kind of pops up and floats it up over the top, and then Dean makes this leaping one-handed catch, and I don't really know how else to describe it. Maybe if you can in the comments down below, we'll read some descriptions of that, because honestly, that is a big time play out of a big time player. Dean Connors from Hawaii goes to junior college on the mainland, starts off at Rice in the Division I level, and kind of gets a bonus year with the whole JUCO ruling and ends up at Houston. I don't want to say randomly, but certainly not a thing he thought he was going to be doing a year before that. And can you imagine this team without him? Like just an irreplaceable part of the team and program. But what a catch out of that spot right there. Now, honestly, the 22-point win is such a. I mean, Kevin taps in here. Kevin Moore, listener, chimes in. It's always good. You get to put your backups in for a Big 12 game, especially Kevin. I would add for a Big 12 road game. Those things, even yes, Oklahoma State is down. The roster's in turmoil. They fired their coach. All of that. That's very true. Big 12 road games are hard to win, and 11 a.m. games are hard to win. All those things factor in, and Houston came out on top. Now, that doesn't mean that there was a perfect game plan. It still had 8 penalties. Like, against I understand they're a Big 12 team, but against a bottom of the Big 12 team, you can't be committing 8 penalties. Execution a couple different times. I still think I blame Liam Doherty on the blocked punt. I had some people try and tweet things that might have been this fault or that fault, but ultimately you got to catch the snap and punt the football away. No turnovers, so that's a clean sheet for Houston in that way. And ultimately, like you said, you got the offense back on track. Defense showed LaTravion McCutcheon with an incredible interception himself. His brother's the defensive back, and that was impressive. Snacks and the offensive line looked pretty good today. I think they looked better. Yes, I think that's absolutely a factor here. I think the offensive line looked better. I also think, like I said, it makes you look a lot better, like a lot better when Conner Weigman is delivering the ball so fast that you only have to hold your block for, a 2 count as opposed to a 3 or a 4. Those defensive linemen, even backup, Oklahoma State defensive linemen with all their roster turmoil, a Big 12 defensive lineman is hard to block for a long time. And so getting the ball out quickly helped them. That means you got to have receivers open quickly. This all works together, obviously. And so it's interesting to see that play out for Houston in a big kind of way. Dominant win, says Craig Mitchell up here. It felt like a pretty dominant win, I would add. Great job, says Rebecca. A couple of other people chiming in with Derek. Derek Hoff says here, Haroff says that Amari is special. And I opened with him in this segment. I want to close with him in this segment because I do think that defenses plan to stop Stephon Boogie Johnson, plan to try and stop Tanner Koziol a lot. I hadn't seen an update on Tanner yet. I don't think he's anything too crazy, but haven't seen anything yet. I think that when they try to stop them, those two guys, you're going to see things like Amari Thomas open up over the middle of the field for 150 yards. I told you at the start of the year, I thought this wide receiver room was really talented. It's taken a while to get going. I said last week I thought their wide receiver room was good enough against Tech that you could have some advantages down the field against them, and they may be the best team in the Big 12. Now, the pass rush ultimately changed that calculus, obviously, but I still think Houston won wide receiver versus DB matchups in that game that just never got to get seen. And you kind of got to show that off today in a weird way. Now, the offensive game plan was interesting, throwing the ball 34 times. I think that's in large part because, honestly, they felt comfortable with Conner through 30 of those 34. Felt comfortable with Conner taking advantage of a depleted secondary with his wideouts and studs. He's got on the outside, doing that. And then, honestly, there's some aspect of this that's feed the hot hand. When Amari Thomas is going to get 157 yards catching the football, you'd be silly to not throw him that 7th ball, right? That would be kind of dumb. Now, we have, injury of Stacey Sneed. We're hoping that's not as awful as it looked. We'll see. But ultimately, you get out of this. Tanner Koziol, I guess, did get hit with an upper body injury, something like that online looked like. But I don't know that'll be too crazy. All things considered, the midway point of the season, you're 5-1, a single win away from bowl eligibility, and feeling pretty good about a lot of things. Kevin says that he felt like Conner had an eternity for what he had against Tech and their defensive line. For what it's worth, that Tech game is going to be one of those ones that, like, when they're talking about their own college football playoff hopes and all of that, like, the statistics from that game are kind of crazy as far as pressure goes. This was nothing like that, but good call on that one, Kevin. I want to talk about the meaning of this one for Houston in just a second. I think there's a lot of things to draw from that as well as you move forward this game. I don't mean to flush it and not enjoy it, but ultimately you took care of business in Stillwater, and that means there's more business to be done. One project moves on to the next one at your local business. That's the way this goes as well. Before we get to any of that, I do want to remind you guys that today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at DoorDash. This is a fun one today because it's almost, or I guess it is the weekend, Saturday. Now it's time to look back and crown the MVP, and the MVP has to be Amari Thomas. Getting 7 catches, 157 yards. No, he did not get the end zone. He did set up a couple, though, and just like Amari, you can win on every Saturday with DoorDash streaks, saving more every time you order. These players deliver when it matters the most. Just like them, you can come through with no hesitation, no delay. Been watching week after week, and the Amari Thomas performance is not a fluke. He's been building to this all season long, just like you can build along as well. DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash streaks. You can save every Saturday you order and stack it up all season. You can save $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order today. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash streaks. Turn to apply. Promo goes through November 18th. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because the NFL season is here. FanDuel's here with an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, get $300 on bonus bets. If you win, that's right, pick a bet, put down $5. And if it hits, you get $300 back in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, if you're looking for a way to feel more invested in the NFL action tomorrow, I highly advise going to FanDuel. You get in before the game, during the game, prop bets, money lines, anything you need. They've got it over at FanDuel. So see what all the buzz is about. What does Cody say this week? It's the bee's knees. Get in on the bee's knees with this one. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app and get yourself started. Park Rangers locked on Coogs here. I realize my screen here is taking off a finger every now and then when I do the paw. But anyway, go Coogs. Look, this was a big game for Houston in a lot of ways, and I want to start with the mood last Saturday night at TDECU. Houston got outclassed hosting Texas Tech, and Texas Tech is a top 10 team. I totally get it, but they're also an in-state Big 12 team that hurt in a lot of ways. And full disclosure, previous administrations, and by that I mean the Holgerson era, I would have felt worried. I would have not felt comfortable playing an 11 a.m. road game the next week. It'd be very easy for a lot of college football programs for that loss to carry over into this week. It absolutely happens. It happens all the time across college sports. These are college kids, and it's a very natural thing. I mean, frankly, on my own comment section on YouTube, right, about these shows throughout the week, people were talking more about last week's Tech game than this upcoming Oklahoma State game, right? It was on everyone's mind. And that Willie Fritz had these guys turned around. It didn't start super fast, but, trick plays happen. Oklahoma State always was trick play out the gate for their own touchdown. But ultimately, Houston responded. They did not let Tech beat them twice. They carried things over and took care of business in Stillwater. That means that this program is 5-1. Fifth win is the first time they had a fifth win since 2022 in the American Athletic Conference. You still had Dana Holgerson. You still had Clayton Tune. You still had Tank Dell. Had a whole Matthew Golden on that roster. Whole different kind of roster back then. And frankly, if you remember that season, was it 8 wins, 8 wins, I guess, after the bowl game that they had, felt kind of like a disappointment in that season. And you're already at 5-1 in this one after having won 4 games in 2023 and 2024, respectively. That's a big deal. We'll talk about bowl projections, stuff like that, when we get to 6 wins. I don't want to jinx things, so I try not to do all of that. I will say, though, that it's nice to be thinking about those kinds of things in not even technically mid-October, right? Like, that's a good feeling. I mentioned that that I don't know if the Dana Holgerson era wins this football game. There were moments early in this one where it felt like even if you maybe came in feeling okay about things, you might have left it not feeling so good, right? Obviously, opening by giving up a touchdown on a trick play is never fun. The defense, I thought, responded pretty strong after that. I mentioned the Trevion McCutcheon's play on the back in the back half, which weird to think of him as playing in the back half. But you also had big games out of Corey Platt and Carlos Allen at the line of scrimmage. Jalen Garner led you in tackles for what feels like every week. Rook Brown made a couple of impressive plays. I mean, a defense that got a little embarrassed last week by missing tackles and things like that, it just stood up and stood strong in this one in a way that was very responsive feeling. And for all the flaws that we put on this Oklahoma State roster, they have a very athletic quarterback and a guy that was playing legitimately Division I wideout for the last 2 seasons at SEC and Big 12 schools, respectively. And so you kind of thought like that could present some problems. You don't have a lot of film on him either, so you don't necessarily know what to expect out of him in this offense. And Houston, again, yes, they have trick plays and they practice too. I get all of that. But it did feel like Houston had answers to this. More comments here. It says Amari has a Sunday future. If we're talking about what this kind of game means, this is the kind of game that people will cite when he gets drafted, right? He had 157 yards against Oklahoma State, right? Like people will mention that one as an outlier because 157 yards is bonkers in a single game as wide receiver. And then James here says it felt at first in this one like it was going to carry over. Glad they got it turned around. And I assume that means on the Texas Tech game, if it happened back when I was talking that part. And I really do feel like, and this is just refreshing, I have not had confidence that Houston would not carry this over in the football program from one loss to the next week, basically since 2016. And even then, I don't want to act like it was a full, like I was fully past it, right? Obviously, 2015, you only lose the one game, but 2016, when things started to spiral and there were rumors about Herman and all that, you kind of wondered how much of that was happening behind the scenes a little bit, or what like the mood and all that was. Then you had Major, didn't trust that. Holgerson, didn't trust that. It's really kind of the first time that we're feeling that in a long time where we can, yes, we got embarrassed on national TV last Friday. Then we show up, or last Saturday. Then we show up this Saturday to play Oklahoma State on TNT, also national TV, a little bit earlier in the day. And TNT was great for what it's worth. I thought they clearly had done their research and knew a lot about Houston. I thought that was important. I think that would be interesting to see how that carries over throughout the next couple of years on the TV contract. Ultimately, Houston shows up and shows out, though, and a great victory for the program. I think what else. I had another note as far as what this means, but I don't want to get ahead of myself on the bowl games thing. I would just point out, though, that with a bunch of guys up at Oklahoma State that are probably in the, looking to move around, new coaching staff coming in and all of that, showing off the best parts of your program is never a bad thing. Jason Queso Brooks, Stephon Boogie Johnson. I don't know why all Oklahoma State guys have nicknames, but both of those guys are on your Houston Cougar roster after leaving that coaching staff that was there previously. And I think that's a good deal there. Now, I want to talk about Nightcaps really quickly, and then we'll get out of here. Now, Nightcaps is going to be a little different because it's not quite nighttime, but it's also just the right thing to do. Going to pass those out in just 1 second. But first, today's show also brought to you by our buddies over at Mazda. Also brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, but about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep the game moving forward. I'm going to say this week's moment that moves the game forward was the Dean Connors touchdown catch. I feel like the mojo off of that bled into the rest of the game. It was an incredible effort by one man on one play. And yes, it was a very well-placed ball, but it was not an easy catch by any stretch of the imagination. And I felt like after that, Houston said, okay, we can win one-on-one matchups in this one, and enough of those one-on-one matchups will lead to a big-time team victory. And when you're following what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. Just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, nightcaps across the board here. These are where we hand out like a tip of the cap kind of thing, or other nightcaps if that's what you're feeling. To various Houston Cougars on their performance from the game of the day here. Amari Thomas, we mentioned it several times. 7 catches, 157 yards. He did not get in the end zone on his own, and I guess if you want to draw a line in the sand there on offensive players, that's fine. Certainly felt like he set up some touchdowns, and more importantly, based on what Oklahoma State was trying to do, Amari Thomas setting up in the middle of the field exploited that problem. 22 yards to catch, big time plays out of Cerro. Now, Dean Connors had his own multiple touchdown game, not wrong. Big time performance out of Dean in this one too. And I feel like, I guess he had his rushing touchdown, his receiving touchdown. So it wasn't, he had 2 touchdowns, one through the air and one on the ground. But Dean Connors has really, really special playability. And it was nice to get show that off again after kind of running to a brick wall last week. He was a post-game presser guy last week after Texas Tech, and he was visibly frustrated. Just his body language was like, I can't believe that just happened the way that it happened. And it was nice to see him kind of get to shake that off, so to speak, and get in the end zone a couple times, get loose some. Conner Weigman, we mentioned, threw the ball to 6 different wideouts for multiple completions. I actually had a couple other passes completed as well. 300 yards through the air. And again, that's been a couple years since he or a Houston Cougar have done that. That is all impressive. And I want to say it's particularly impressive that this is not some FCS opponent, right? Yes, their rosters had a bunch of turnover and all of that, and the coaching staff's fired. But this was the kind of stat line we talked about opening the year with. 39 points for the Houston Cougars is an impressive outing. Obviously, I believe that's the most points they've scored this season. Yes, they scored 36 against Colorado. It's the most points they've scored this season as they keep on going. You take out that Tech game as a speed bump, hiccup, whatever, and this Houston team continues to roll and the offense continues to grow every week. But we got to shout out some defensive nightcaps, tip the caps kind of moments as well. Jalen Garner had 7 total tackles, 7 total tackles, 4 solo, and 2 big-time sacks. Corey Platt and Carlos Allen both had 6 tackles of their own. I would point out that Carlos Allen continues to look like an NFL football player. If you go back and rewatch this tomorrow, like I will, I always watch it at least a second time on a Sunday, especially when they win. It's nice to feel that joy once again. Carlos Allen gets double-teamed a lot, and he still moves the line of scrimmage, and he moves the pile side to side in a lot of ways. Mark Stampley, I got a guy named Chris. I'll just leave it at Chris. But Chris was early on the Mark Stampley train. I want to say it was like last January. He was like, this dude's going to make plays. And I want to tell you right now, Chris knows ball. Now, Mark Stampley continues to make plays. Shouts to Chris on that one. I should probably shout out Brandon Mack, credited with a sack in this one. With all the big plays on defense, kind of hard to remember exactly each and every one of them, but Latrevion McCutcheon coming up with a big sack, big interception, because I think he's going to make sacks and Latrell's going to make the interceptions, because that's consistently where my head is at. But it's not how this one worked out. I don't think he had a statistically strong game. It wasn't necessarily like one to write home about, but Eddie Walls early in this game had a big pass deflection, and turned the ball over, gave Houston the ball back on downs, I believe. That ended up being kind of a big mojo play, a big momentum play. At the time, we're like, can somebody just do something, right? And Eddie Walls came through in that one. So shouts to him, tip the cap, nightcap there as well. Now, we'll be breaking this one down more for Monday as things. It might be Tuesday. Now, heads up with Monday being a holiday for a lot of folks. We're a largely listen to on your way to work kind of show. We may get you 2 on Tuesday instead of Monday and Tuesday. It might be Monday afternoon for when you're on the way home from your cookouts or whatever. So more on that when we get there. Follow on social media at Ainsworth512 for the latest, or hit subscribe and just hit the bell so you know when we're live on our favorite podcast platforms. Locked On Coogs is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Coogs is primarily Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team, your 5-1 Houston Cougars each and every day. Go Coogs.